Hi there, Dave Markham here for Recognizing Systemic Racism. We are reviewing and reading Carol Anderson's great book, White Rage. Chapter 5 is entitled How to Unelect a Black President. And here's a fairly lengthy quote, but it's worth sticking with. So let me read it for you. Meanwhile, first-time voters cast almost 69% of their ballots for Obama. That's 2/3. While that really could have, or more to the point should have, signaled an opportunity for the GOP to re-examine its platform, the sclerotic hardening of the conservative notions that moved the Republican Party from the centrist right to the right wing made it increasingly difficult, if not impossible, to adapt the GOP's policies to address the overriding concerns of this wave of newly engaged voters. One party official, while offering assurances that racism wasn't the driving motivation, admitted, quote, "It's simply that the Republican Party gave up a long time ago ever believing that anything they did would get minorities to vote for them." End quote. Trapped between a demographically declining support base and an ideological straitjacket that made the party not only unresponsive but also unpalatable to millions of Americans, the GOP reached for a tried and true weapon, disenfranchisement. Once it became clear that voter turnout rate of blacks had nearly equaled that of whites, as Penda Hare of the Progressive Advancement Project has noted, quote, "Conservatives were looking at it and saying, we've got to clamp things down. They'd always tried to suppress the black vote, but it was then that they came up with new schemes," end quote. So after the election of Barack Obama, the Republicans understood that they could no longer win elections based on their policy proposals and initiatives. And so they decided to cheat by engaging in voter suppression. These efforts at voter suppression undermined American democracy long before Donald Trump ran for president. This is back in 2008, 2009, 2010. I mean, over 10 years ago. The Republican Party was already corrupt before Donald Trump arrived on the scene to take advantage of the moral decay which had already set in. A guy by the name of Hans von Spakovsky, a former George W. Bush appointee to the Federal Elections Commission, was the chief architect of the new Jim Crow efforts to suppress the black vote. And Jane Mayer had a great article in 2012 in the New Yorker called The Voter Fraud Myth, which goes on today with Trump and his cronies trying to interfere with the post office delivering absentee ballots. What can you do about voter suppression? Well, first, check the policies about voting with your Secretary of State and your county election commission. What are the rules about voter registration? What are the provisions for voting itself? Where, when, how do voters engage in voting activity differently based on age, race, and social class? In a lot of states and jurisdictions, they're closing voting places so that minority voters have to travel long distances and wait in line for hours in order to vote. While white voters in the suburbs can walk right in and cast their ballot. So that varies from state to state, but you hear reports of that on a regular basis. Once you've checked out what the rules are in your local jurisdiction and in your state, share the results of your research with others. And then form a group of people who are interested in the issue, formally or informally. I mean, there already are groups out there that are interested in voting rights, like the League of Women Voters, who aren't as active now as they used to be, but they still exist. And there may be other groups that are concerned with voting in your precinct, in your county, in your state. So you might join up with them, or you might form your own little, I call it a cuddle group of people interested in the issue, to jointly decide how you can approach your county level election commission and your parties, whether they're Republican or Democrat, to see to it that voting is fair and equally available to all eligible citizens. Fourth, help voters get to the polls and actually vote. And when you go to vote, take a family member or friend with you. It's very distressing to hear that in some areas people are waiting 2, 3, 4 hours in line to vote. There's no need for that if it was properly planned for. But if people are in fact going to vote, they need sometimes a lot of support and assistance. So, and there's intimidation going on at the polls. So there is strength in numbers. So if you go to vote, go with a group or go with other people. And lastly, only elect candidates who support fair and equal voting policies and practices. That ought to be on the top of the list of policy positions, beliefs, and promises that candidates make. Are they in favor of fair and equal voting policies and practices, or do they engage in voter suppression and discrimination? Only vote for candidates that want to be fair and above board. Otherwise, you're contributing to the corruption and enabling it. And you've become what we call codependent, in the sense that you're supporting people who engage in corrupt practices and voter suppression. All right. Well, if you have thoughts about this video and this article, please leave them in the comments. And as always, feel free to share it on your social media platforms, or email it to friends and family and people you think might be interested. So till next time, it's Dave Markham for Recognizing Systemic Racism. Be well, stay well. Bye.